Hokage Unlimited enhancement every 60 days. Chapter 281-300. 281. The Past of the Bundy Brothers. They didn't see the cannon when they landed on the shore, but Longcheng saw the giant cannon on the other side of the cliff through his arrogance. It's just that he didn't remember that it was Walder's ship, thinking that the gunport was originally on the island. This island is just their pirate ship. Longcheng was not too surprised, and affirmed to Vista, who was full of astonishment. It's too big. Vista looked over there and still, the two Walder brothers who were arguing still couldn't help sighing. Humph. What do you know? The world government, Marin Vando, and Mary Joa, from that day 30 years ago, I swore in my heart to destroy them. Bundywald yelled at his elder brother excitedly, his eyes full of hatred. But Bing Jack, a thin and short body, raised his head to look at his brother, and hesitated. 60 years ago, when they were children, the two brothers sat on the edge of a cliff and looked out to the sea, and the scene of proclaiming their lofty ambitions to the sea came to Bing Jack's mind again. 60 years ago. Look, Walder, don't you think it's great that this sea connects islands and countries like we've never seen before? Bing Jack was standing on the edge of the cliff with his hips on his hips, looking at the sea in the distance. His eyes were full of hope and yearning, and he said to Walder, "Yeah, in the future we must." Wald, who was still a child, sat on the edge of the cliff, with his hands stretched out behind his back to support the ground. His body leaned back slightly, his eyes were also full of yearning, and he said happily, "Cough, cough, cough, cough." Bing Jack suddenly covered his mouth with his skinny hands, coughed violently, and turned pale. "Ah, it's all right, bro." Walder immediately became tense, and looked at Bing Jack with a worried look on his face. "Don't worry, Walder." Bing Jack, with cold sweat on his forehead, smiled comfortingly. "Big brother. Wald, you must go to sea in the future. At the end of this endless sea, there must be an unimaginable adventure waiting for you." Bing Jack looked to the sea and stretched out his arms as if to embrace the sea. "Aren't you going, bro?" Listening to Bing Jack talking about his future adventures, Walder asked unhappily. Cough cough, I've been like this since I was a child. It's a bit impractical to go out to sea." Bing Jack looked down at the little Walder, pointed to his own appearance, and said regretfully, "Brother, don't say such things. Do you want to stay on this island for the rest of your life?" Wald looked at his elder brother and said excitedly, "You have to take my place out of this island, out of the sea, to see the world, and thrive." Bing Jack shook his head and explained to Walder, "Big brother, I want to walk with Big brother and travel around the world. Big brother will come too." Walder clenched his fist tightly and asked his elder brother in a pleading tone. "But..." Bing Jack frowned, looked at himself, and said sadly, "It's okay, Big brother, I will protect you, let's go together." Wald's eyes were firm, and he said to his brother with a sincere expression, "Wald." Seeing his brother's sincere appearance, Bing Jack's eyes dripped with tears, and he wiped his tears with emotion. "Why are we crying? Aren't we brothers?" Seeing that his brother tacitly agreed to go to sea with him by default, Walder said happily with an innocent smile on his face. A few years later, the little Walder was several times as tall as his elder brother, Bing Jack, who was still as thin as he was when he was a child, and never grew taller. They went to sea. Remember, we are the Bundy brothers. In the 30 years since then, the two brothers have gone through adventures and fights, and Wald has rescued his brother Bing Jack from the enemy's pirate ship again and again, and later formed his own the pirate group. Bundywald shouted this sentence every time he looked at the shuddering enemies who had been hammered to the ground. After a few years, we went to sea. This was supposed to be our adventure around the world. Ahem. Until later. Bing Jack looked up at Walder, his eyes were sad, and he said with a guilty tone, "Until then you betrayed me." At this moment, Bundywald, recalling the scene that made him feel extremely shameful and angry, looked at Bing Jack with distrust in his eyes and roared, "Sure enough, You are still haunted by what happened 30 years ago. Said with a sigh. I was frozen in the Push City and spent 30 years in suspended animation. What happened 30 years ago is like what happened yesterday to me, how could I forget it? Walter clenched his fist tightly, even though Gyram, Sebastian and Nakin were fighting for him on the other side. Walter had no trust in them deep in his heart. Philo reminds you. 3 things to read. 282. No forever partner. Bing Jack escaped with your crew back then. In fact, it was just to retain strength, avoid unnecessary sacrifices, and wait for you to come back and make a comeback. Longcheng, who had been watching silently by the side, suddenly spoke up. You bastard, you know shit. You weren't born 30 years ago. Bondewald glanced at Guangyu Dragon City, obviously not listening to Dragon City's words. Yeah, Gyram, Sebastian and I. Cough. And Nakin, we've been waiting for your comeback for the past 30 years. Ahem. For the past 30 years, we have been I believe that you will be resurrected one day sooner or later. Bing Jack covered his mouth with his hand, coughed in pain, and explained excitedly. Including this battleship. Cough. You once said that in our dreams, our ward pirates will have such a battleship. It was also built by us in the past 30 years. Quote. Bing Jack looked at his younger brother with an almost pleading expression on his face. He hoped that Wald could let go of his hatred and return to the young man with the sea and stars in his eyes. He continued to travel the world with him as the two brothers. Chasing the true freedom of dreams. Hee. Yes, I am very grateful to you. In the past 30 years, such a battleship has been built for me. Since it was built for me, let it help me fulfill my wish, Bomb Mary Joa. And the Junjun fruit, I want to get it too. Whoever dares to stop me, whoever is my enemy, I will destroy whoever. Wald's face was gloomy, facing Bing Jack's words without the slightest emotion. He fell into his own deep hatred. Longcheng and Beasta quietly watched the two brothers quarrel without speaking. Longcheng knows that it is much harder to change a person's ingrained concept than to obliterate a person's existence. He has no interest in bringing a monster that has been trapped in the advanced city for 30 years and indulged in hatred for 30 years into the right direction. Wald, you have many paths, but you chose this one. You will spend your whole life in hatred before you die. Is it really worth it? Beasta also exported persuasion. Looking at this man of the same age as his father, Beasta also heard about what happened between the world government, the navy and the ward pirates 30 years ago. PFFL la la la. Wald laughed, as if he had heard some slang, and then glanced at Beasta and the fifth fight with Gyram, Sebastian, Nakin and others on the other side. Becoming indifferent and terribly calm. If you were also caught by the world government and the navy because your subordinates were shooting yourself, and you were trapped in ice for 30 years under the sea, you wouldn't say that. Wald said coldly. Seeing the members of the 5th Division who were fighting hard for him, Beasta was silent for a moment. No. Beasta looked up at Wald, his eyes determined. They are not my men, they are my companions. PFFL la la la. Hearing what Beasta said, Walter immediately laughed wildly. Partners are ridiculous, really ridiculous. PFFL la la la. Is there really anyone in this world who takes a partner so seriously? Don't be naive. People are selfish. Those people only call themselves brothers when they have wine and meat to eat. When disaster strikes, they won't fly by themselves. There are no permanent partners, only permanent enemies. Wald looked at Beasta like a fool, and did not believe in the so-called partner in Beasta's mouth. He might have believed it once, but it was impossible for him to believe these things now. Bang! There was a sound of impact in the distance, and then Longcheng and the others saw the fish giant Sebastian being knocked away by Caribou and Monet, and falling in a parabola in front of Bondewald and Bing Jack. Sebastian, why are you beaten like this? If you can't. Looking at Sebastian, who had a lot of injuries on his body and looked a little embarrassed, Wald said with a hint of anger on his face, and said in a bad tone. No, Captain Wald, I can. Sebastian quickly straightened up and stood up from the ground. Spinning tornado. Sebastian shouted loudly, jumped from the ground to the sky, curled up his body, rotated at a super high speed, and dived towards Caribou and Monet. On the other hand, Caesar, who is good at using poison, and Nakan, a pharaoh of traditional Chinese medicine boxing who are good at using medicine and have also studied poison, fought equally well. The cube fruit ability, and Duke Inuarashi, the shopkeeper of the cat viper, was stuck in a stalemate. During the battle, pieces of rectangular squares of soil and rocks flew back and forth in the air, holding Duke Inuarashi and the cat in check. The actions of the pit viper treasurer. By Bingjak for the ward pirates scuffled with the members of the 5th Division of Vista. 283. Roses dance wildly, sword flowers are like rain. What a waste. It's a bunch of useless things. Wald snorted coldly and was very dissatisfied with the performance of the new and old members of the ward pirates. Wald, it's not what you think. In that case, the espionage agency of the world government planted spies around us. Cough. That led to such a thing. Bingjak said bitterly. But when I was caught by the Navy, you took Gyram and the others and left me and escaped. I will never forget it. Wald said coldly. Wald, stop these unnecessary wars. Let's go back to the way we were, continue to travel the world, and live the rest of our lives. Bingjak is still begging bitterly, and everything Wald does now has deviated from what they were pursuing back then. Walder has lost trust in his partner and brother Bingjak, and even has some indifference and hostility. Enough. Bingjak, are you even going to disobey my orders? My orders are absolute. All you have to do is obey my orders. Even you, Bingjak, don't disobey my orders lightly. Wald snorted coldly, unmoved, ignored Bingjak, and looked at Longcheng and Bista. Partners. In the face of interests in life and death, partners are not even farts. Wald said with a disdainful face. I don't agree with you. Who paid the most attention to partners and friendship, frowned and refuted, faintly angry. Partners are people who can entrust life and death. A person without a partner is just a pitiful worm. And you, it's just that you don't know who is your partner and who isn't. Fuck. Hearing that Longcheng said that he was a pitiful creature, Wald, who became a thorn in his heart because his partner betrayed him, was immediately furious. Walder bent down, his 5 fingers bent like hooks, covered with a domineering armed look. He scratched on the ground, and when the ground was flat, he grabbed a handful of rubble. Wald. Bingjak saw Walder's insistence on doing nothing to his words. Sheng sighed, his face full of worry and worry. Momo 50 times the shot. With a loud shout, Val grabbed the gravel and threw it at Longcheng and Bista. Puff puff puff. The stone that was originally broken as the size of a finger, surged at a speed of 50 times, and instantly became 50 times the size of a wash basin in midair flying towards Longcheng and Bista, as if it was 50 times faster. The shells are normal. Nine-tailed fox form. Longcheng's pupils shrank, and he immediately used the dog fruit phantom beast ability to transform into a human beast in the 2nd stage, with a fox face on his body, a strange fox face on his face, covered with white fur, his limbs turned into sharp claws, and 9 thick and long claws. The white fox tail swayed behind him, blocking Bista. 100,000 tiles and fists and 9 chaos. A soft drink, Longcheng's 9 tails are bent and stretched in front of him, with the tail tip facing forward, like 9 strong and powerful arms, each of which is charged with the power of 100,000 tile Zhengchen, facing towards each other like a hurricane. Punch with Bundywald's 50x gravel shot. Clap 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 clap. Dragon City's dazzling 9 tails, at a speed that ordinary people can't catch with the naked eye, smash those. Shoo, 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 shoo. For a time, a large number of broken stones were scattered around, passing through Longcheng and behind Bista, hitting in the woods and on the ground, stirring up dust all over the ground. Bista was not idle either, and in the gap that Longcheng was blocking for himself, he used his shave to bypass the scattered gravel and broke through to Bondewald's side. Rose dance. Bista snorted and swung his swords at Bondewald. Instant, the air was filled with a strong fragrance of roses, and a large number of rose petals appeared on the two foil swords in Bista's hands. Dozens of sharp blue sword chi swung out from the blade in an instant, wrapped in a fierce breath, and shot towards Bondewald with the rose petals flying all over the sky. Is this the legendary rose dance? Seeing this extremely gorgeous scene, Longcheng was greatly amazed, which was much more shocking than what he had seen in the anime before. Bondewald also noticed Bista's attack, with a serious look on his face. If he resists this move, he will inevitably suffer fatal damage and must avoid it. Momo 30 times faster. Bondewald bent over to grab Bing-Jack. The wind was blowing under his feet, decisively used the fruit's ability to double his movement speed, and left the place. It's just that this rose fluttered like a rain of swords and flowers, and came to Bondewald in an instant. Even if Bondewald had quickly reacted to get out of this place, he was still hit by several of them. And Bing-Jack was caught by Wald. Grab the guard behind you. PFF'd, PFF'd, PFF'd. Several deep blood troughs broke open in front of Bondewald. Felu reminds you. 3 things to read. 284. Absolute slash. Life and death crisis. Bang. Bondewald's chest burst into a cloud of blood, and he snorted coldly, feeling pain. It's just that Bondewald kept his footsteps, grabbing Bing-Jack and continuing to leave the attack range of Bista Rose's flurry at 30 times the speed, showing his figure dozens of meters away. Wald is very strong, but he is an old man after all, and the city has been frozen for 30 years. The functions of various parts of the body and muscles are inevitably the same as when they were in their prime 30 years ago. There are differences. In terms of physical resistance, Wald's physique is not as strong as when he was young. Bing-Jack and Walder have been inseparable in this sea for decades, and he is most familiar with Walder's situation. Wald. Of Walder and looked sideways at Walder with a worried face. If it wasn't for the fact that he was within the attack range of Bista's Rose Flurry just now, Walder would have pulled himself up, and he would not have delayed those tenths of a second. Otherwise, with only a few tenths of a second, Wald can definitely avoid Bista's sword energy with 30 times the speed, and he won't be injured. In those years when the two brothers were galloping at sea, Wald did the same, protecting himself time and time again. Thinking back to the scenes of being intimate with Walder, those happy and simple sailing times, the eyes of an old Bing-Jack couldn't help but get wet. Humph. Come down by yourself, don't hinder me from fighting. Bondewald glanced at the tearful Bing-Jack, snorted coldly, put Bing-Jack on the ground, said a very blunt word, and then ignored Bing-Jack. Then, hey. A bang, Bondewald's figure disappeared again and appeared on the other side of Dragon City 100 meters away. Fast enough. Bista secretly murmured, with a smile on his lips, chasing after Bondewald. It doesn't matter. No matter what, they are always brothers. Longcheng glanced at Bing-Jack's position, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Switched positions in order to avoid affecting Bing-Jack. Just that Longcheng's face is still dignified, because he smells domineering and the absolute domain has been gathered back. Absolute realm is used frequently these days, and it has now come to his. Can no longer use the absolute field to fight. The system-enhanced absolute domain is too exhausting, and Longcheng's head is still there, a faint tingling pain. Unable to predict Walder's actions with the domineering arrogance, Longcheng can only simply compete for reaction speed, attack speed and movement speed. With your speed, trying to hurt me is just a dream. Bondewald snorted disdainfully, ignoring Bing-Jack, and could now let go of the fight. Hee, try it. Bista held two swords, and took advantage of the moment to catch up to Bondewald, and the two swords crossed and swung forward. Two cyan swords with a length of tens of meters were crossed, slashing to Bondewald. Go. It doesn't matter how many times you come. Momo 50 times faster. Bondewald sneered and directly increased the speed by 50 times. Oh yeah. Although the two swords were cut in the air, the corners of Bista's mouth were still slightly raised. After the two-sword chi slashed the cliff behind Wald in the air, they continued to stretch for thousands of meters to cut the trees in half. Longcheng smiled knowingly, and the figure instantly appeared behind Bondewald, blocking Bondewald's retreat. It's now. Lanzhao absolutely smashes chaos. Vista is just feigning attack, the real back end is Dragon City. Dragon City's 9 white fox tails swaying messily in the air suddenly pointed to Bondewald. Wow, 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 wow. In an instant, hundreds of chi blades dozens of meters wide kicked out from the 9 tails that Longcheng was waving, piercing the air. Messy cut to Bondewald. Longcheng's mouth is slightly raised. This move has been strengthened by the system and has the absolute slashing attribute of Lanzhao, which can slash anything. Even the armed arrogance possessed by the opponent is nothing but tofu in the face of Longcheng's absolute slashing. In terms of sharpness, only the sword aura of the world's largest swordsman, Hokage Mahak, can be slightly comparable to it. Hit by the Dragon City, Bondewald will be cut off in the middle. Bondewald, who has just avoided Vista's sword chi, suddenly has an unprecedented sense of crisis in his heart. This kid, how can? The dangerous aura suddenly appeared behind him, and even the battle-hardened Bondewald felt his scalp tingle. It was just that everything happened in an instant. As long as he was slow to react by one breath, he would die here. Momo shaves 100 times faster. The juncture of life and death, Bondewald roared and amplified the speed of shaving 100 times. It was possible to forcibly increase the speed of shaving 100 times to the limit. Longcheng's pupils shrank, and the inevitable killer missed again. 285. Flatten this mountain. The dazzling air blades, each with a width of tens of meters or even nearly 100 meters, swept randomly towards Bondewald's original position. It's just these chi blades, without exception, were all smashed into the air, which greatly disappointed Longcheng. Even so, these hundreds of chi blades fell on the mountain at the center of this island-type battleship, like a random knife-cutting tofu. Kai, 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 kai. The sound of air blades cutting through the mountain rock sounded, and all the air blades passed through the top of the mountain without any hindrance, and then continued to float into the sky. The scene was once spectacular. There was silence for a moment between heaven and earth. Suddenly, the mountain top that was passed through by the hundreds of Lan's athletes' knives in Longcheng fell apart. Ba la la la. It was originally a complete mountain top, and it shattered in an instant, and the rocks rolled down, rushing towards the members of the 5th Division who were fighting at the foot of the mountain, the crew of the Ward Pirates, Duke Inuarashi and others. And this mountain made of rocks was flattened by Longcheng with one move, and this island was also exposed. The view from the other side of the mountain. An exaggeratedly huge cannon is standing there. It is this cannon that allows Bondewald to cooperate with his own multiplication fruit ability to instantly destroy an island. What a terrible power. Get out of the way. Stop fighting. Watch out for these boulders. ... The huge boulders broken down from the whole mountain rumbled and rolled towards the people at the foot of the mountain, overwhelming the sky. Both sides of the battle don't care. Whether it was the 5th Division or the Ward Pirates, they all stopped their attacks and ran away shouting. Moonstep. Bondewald, who narrowly escaped, flashed in front of Bing Jack, grabbed Bing Jack, and jumped into the air with his feet on the air. Bondewald, who kept performing moonsteps and hovering in the air, had his forehead covered in cold sweat and looked deeply at Guangyu Dragon City. Even when he was young, facing the siege of the navy led by Karp and Sengoku, Bondewald never encountered such a crisis of anger. And Longcheng just gave Bondewald a glance at this moment, and then disappeared instantly. When he appeared again, he had already appeared beside the members of the 5th Division. 100,000 tiles and fists and 9 chaos. 100,000 watts fist Gatlin. Longcheng was secretly annoyed. The tower had already cooperated perfectly just now, and the reaction speed was fast enough. Let Bondewald escape. It's almost time to shave. Boom boom boom. With 9 tails, one punch after another, Longcheng smashed the boulders that hit the 5th squad members into powder. Everyone dodge. And Beasta also walked among the rolling boulders, wielding sword energy one after another, covering Duke Inuarashi and the shopkeeper Cat Viper to chop the boulders to pieces. Thank you. Duke Inuarashi and Cat Viper thanked the shopkeeper and retreated towards the edge of the area where the boulder fell. Block space. Seeing the falling boulder, Gyram's expression changed. He squatted down, bent down and stretched out his hand to press on the ground. Ground nearby was suddenly divided into blocks, holding Gyram himself, Sebastian, Nakan, and the minions of the ward pirates floating into the air. Caesar quickly turned himself into gaseous gas, floating in the air to avoid the attack. Monet also hurriedly waved his wings and flew into the air, dodging a passing boulder. Gluck cluck. And Caribou's, cluck. Laughed twice, then turned into a pool of mud and fell on the ground, letting the boulders roll over him. Rumbling boom. The earth trembled, to be precise, the entire battleship trembled, and the entire artificially constructed hill vanished into nothingness in an instant. Rolled into the sea. A large amount of dust floated in the air, covering the entire battlefield. Puff la 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 la. Dusty Bundywald's unique laugh. Guangyu Longcheng, isn't this your trump card? PFF la la la, that's really disappointing, you still can't kill me. Bundywald, holding Bing Jack on his shoulders, walked out of the dust and fog, and his huge body made him look down at Guangyu Dragon City. Longcheng stared at Wald with gloomy eyes. If you can use the domineering arrogance just now, as long as you can be 1 point faster than Bondewald, this battle can be over. An old and troublesome character, the reaction speed and movement speed are so fast, no wonder it used to be a big pirate of the same level as Whitebeard and Roger. I don't think Foil Beasta is better than Beggar Beasta. Pooh la 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 la. Bondewald mocked Dragon City and Beasta recklessly, and laughed loudly. I was frozen for 30 years and suddenly woke up to see myself in my 40s, suddenly in my 70s, and half of my life was wasted. What kind of feeling is this? Longcheng's eyes flickered, looking at Bondewald, and said slowly. Phailu reminds you, 3 things to read. 286. Justice is a fig leaf. Seeing the playful smile on Longcheng's face, Bondewald was instantly furious. What did you say? The crew was instigated by the world government's espionage organization. The brothers fled with their subordinates, and they were captured by the world government and put into ice and imprisoned at the bottom of the city for 30 years. This incident is the greatest shame in Bundewald's life. Longcheng stared straight at Bondewald and said slowly. About your life, don't you think that if you can sum it up in 2 words, there is only failure left? No, you know shit. Have you ever tried to be betrayed by your own men? If it wasn't for them, I, Bondewald, would have been the freest man on the sea. I heard that Guangyu Longcheng used failure. 2 words to judge his own life, Bundewald growled furiously. Huh. I'm sorry, I have no men on board, only mates. My partner will not betray me. Longcheng sneered twice, and then looked softly at Duke Inuarashi and the shopkeeper Cat Viper, who reported to Guangyu Longcheng with the same firm and supportive eyes as always. As for those, other than, partners. Longcheng paused, glanced at Caesar, Monet, and Caribou, and continued, strictly speaking, it is not someone who is in the same boat as me. Trust and fetters should always be given to those who are worthy of delivery. Longcheng looked at Bundewald and Bing Jack on his shoulders seriously, and said meaningfully. I don't understand what you're talking about. Bondewald frowned, but the anger in his heart dropped a little for no reason. Don't you understand that the biggest failure in your life is not being imprisoned in the advanced city for 30 years, or losing a whole 30 years of life, but not knowing who the people around you are your trustworthy partners? There is no denying that, all the suffering and misfortune experienced in life are fundamentally due to the lack of ability of the parties involved. Longcheng shook his head, he had already spoken. In the past, Bundewald would be sent spies by the people of the World Government Agency or because Bundewald was too simple before. If it wasn't for the fact that Bundewald didn't have a pair of sharp eyes to distinguish the people around him, it was too easy to trust others, and it would not be so easy to be turned against by others. Longcheng is now not only waiting for his arrogance to recover, but also finally trying to persuade this Walder who was blinded by hatred. He knows that Bundywald is not bad by nature. Decades ago, he and his brother Bing Jack set foot on the ocean with a pure heart, just to travel around the world, to see different scenery around the world through the sea, to go to the ocean. Get the freedom of your own life. Blame the world government. After all, the world government and the Navy are the biggest pirates in the world, and they cannot tolerate any powerful aliens in the sea. Not necessarily all the bad guys in the pirates, not necessarily all the good guys in the Navy. What kind of bullshit justice? The burning, killing and looting under the cover of the world government and the Navy. Is the deal done by Doflamingo of Shichibukai in Dressrosa, and the experiment of Punk Hassad, is it the world? The government really doesn't know that the so-called justice that the Navy upholds is the biggest joke in the world. The so-called justice is nothing more than a protective cover and a fig leaf for the privileges and profit-making of the world government, the Tianlong people. Boy, you are teaching me to do things. Although Longcheng's words are loyal, but they are also against his ears, and Bundywald is very upset when he hears what Longcheng said at this time. Maybe it's not that he doesn't understand, he just doesn't want to understand. No, you are the one who used to be called the three great pirates along with One Piece and Whitebeard. I didn't teach you what to do. I'm just telling you where is the gap between you and Roger and Whitebeard. Longcheng shook his head and said calmly. The difference between me and them is blah blah blah. The difference is, they're both dead now, and Bundywald's reputation, will resound on this sea. I want the world, the government and the Navy, and those stupid and ignorant draconians, trembling at the sight of my flag. I want Marin Bando and Marijoya to be razed to the ground. Bundywald laughed wildly, hatred and anger deep in his eyes, and in his heart. Wald. Bingjack, who was put back on the ground by Walder, sighed, knowing that Walder could no longer listen to him now. Bingjack took a deep look at Longcheng. That this young man said, as the big brother, he wanted to say but couldn't say it. Because back then, he did escape with the three Gyram 3. Since he did this to retain the main force of the Ward pirates, facing Ward who was unwilling to forgive them, Bingjack still buried his guilt in his heart. 287. When the flowers fall, when the life ends. Have you seen this cannon? It was born to destroy Marijoya. Just one shot and I'll raze Marijoya to the ground. Bundywald pointed to what appeared after the mountain was flattened, on the island. The cannon on the other side showed off with a look. Bingjack, just watch me turn this shitty world government upside down. Bundywald put down Bingjack, clenched his fists, and looked at Longcheng and Bista with bad eyes. Dad said that those who pursue freedom on this sea should not be blinded by hatred. Bista did not have the same smile on his face as he always did, and said slowly. Facing the experience of Bundywald, Bista was very fortunate that he could come to the Moby Dick and become his father's son. He was very grateful for the happy times on his father's ship. Even after knowing that Marshal Titch's bastard sentenced the Whitebeard pirates, Dad finally chose to forgive him. My dear sons, everyone has the freedom to chase their dreams. He went to chase his dreams, and I still love him. This is what the father said to his sons before he died, so that they should not pursue the right and wrong of Blackbeard. How can they be unhappy on the Moby Dick with an old man who loves them so much, humph. What a lot of nonsense. What hate is not hate, a lot of bullshit, I only believe in my own fists. Boy, dead Whitebeard now, your playhouse game is over. Bundywald scoffed at this and said with a look of disdain. Bang! When Bundywald said that the deep relationship between the father and their sons for so many years was a game of family, Bista's face sank. I'll get the quake fruit. No matter who you are, as long as you grab the quake fruit with me, you'll be my Bundywald's enemy. Puff la 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 la. Bundywald ignored the strong threat in Bista's eyes, his figure flashed, and he rushed straight to Duke Inuarashi and Cat Viper shopkeeper. Get your hands on you first. What? Seeing the huge figure that suddenly appeared in front of them, Duke Inuarashi and the shopkeeper of Cat Viper gave a shock. The two of them did not retreat far, and they were the closest to Deutschland, so they directly became the target of Bondewald. Longcheng did not expect Bondewald to play such an unreasonable card, and he was against Bista. Duke Inuarashi and the others attacked. Boom! Wearer Duke Inuarashi and shopkeeper Cat Viper being the opponents of Bondewald, neither strength nor reaction speed are on the same level. Duke Inuarashi and the shopkeeper Cat Viper only felt their eyes sway, and then there was a severe pain in their chests, which turned into two cannonballs and smashed to the ground, raising a large piece of dust. Despicable. A gust of wind floated behind Bondewald, and Longcheng's angry voice came. I don't have that many rules for fighting. Looking back, Bondewald directly raised his right foot, spun and kicked back. Momo is armed with a 100-speed whirlwind kick. Unexpectedly, Bondewald's reaction was still so fast, Longcheng's fist hanging in the air hadn't fallen, immediately. Take a sip. Armed and domineering. The hard black domineering quickly covered Longcheng's right body to avoid being kicked by Bondewald. And Longcheng's fist is also covered with black domineering, but Longcheng's fist has not hit Bondewald's face. The right side of the waist is first kicked by the whirlwind of Bondewald's right leg. Bang! Bondewald's 100-speed whirlwind kick contains astonishing kinetic energy, and it collided violently with Dragon City's armed domineering. Then Longcheng, who was going to attack from behind, was kicked away. Dragon City's body flew to one side at a high speed, pierced the air, and smashed into the ward pirates. Scoundrels! Boom! Crack! Crack! Ah! Ah! Longcheng smashed a few of Walder's minions, and there were two sounds of broken bones and two bleak screams. Longcheng was kicked by Bondewald, and at this time, he hit those two poor scoundrels, and all the huge kinetic energy was transferred to them. Who was covered with super hardness, armed arrogance, only felt pain, but because of the armed arrogance, most of the impact was relieved, and Longcheng did not suffer any substantial damage. But then, the two scoundrels will be miserable. They are hit by the Dragon City like a human-shaped iron cannonball, and they will be disabled if they don't die. Was not idle either. Taking advantage of the gap between Bondewald's attack on Dragon City, he swung his sword straight at Bondewald. One of the best swordsmen showed his mighty power at this moment. This time, what was swung out of Bista's sword was not the sword energy, but the petals flying all over the sky. It's the end of your life. The petals pass, it is the domain of Bista. Beneath the gentle appearance, there is the sword intent of killing. Phailu reminds you. 3 things to read. 288. 100,000 Tile Jungchen, Black Dragon, multiply 10. At this moment, Bondewald finally showed an unprecedented solemnity on his face, and quickly wrapped his whole body with armed color domineering. However, after all, it was still a little slower. Bista walked past Bondewald with his sword, then stopped, with a smile on his face, and the sound of the sword piercing flesh and blood came from behind. Puff, 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 Wald. Captain Bundy. Captain. Seeing Bondewald fluttering with petals all over his body, and countless blood mists bursting out of his body, veteran cadres such as Bingjak and Gyram were all shocked. Moment later, Bondewald was half kneeling on the ground, his head bowed, and his expression was unclear. The clothes on his body were torn densely and soaked with bright red blood. At this time, Bondewald became a veritable blood man. Do you think, my Bista's sword is not sharp with petals? Bista put away 2 foil swords, turned around slowly and said. The swordsman who was always low-key and silent on Whitebeard's ship. Perhaps there are few large-scale battles, and the power has always been underestimated by the world. But in fact, Bista's strength is not inferior to the world's largest swordsman Hokage. Always calm, with a confident smile on his face, is the consistent image of the captain of the 5th Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. It's over. Captain Bundy wouldn't be. Gyram, the cube man closest to Bondewald, said in a panic as he looked at Captain Wald's tragic and motionless appearance, covered in sword wounds and blood. Walder. Ahem. Are you all right? Bingjak held the bottle, looked at Walder in a panic, and shouted vigorously. The rest of the people also looked at Bista, showing unprecedented fear. The petals flying all over the sky just now are so weird. Even Captain Bondewald was beaten into blood by this trick. All of them were afraid of being targeted by Beasta, for fear that the next petal would fall on them body. It really hurts. Longcheng grinned and scolded those. The scumbag stood up. Even with the world's strongest armor and domineering defense, Longcheng felt quite painful to be kicked by this 100-fold speed whirlwind. Bondewald is really too tricky. The gap between Longcheng and Bondewald now lies in the speed of reaction. If he was able to use the domineering arrogance just now to open the absolute domain, Longcheng would be able to instantly understand all of Bondewald's psychology and activities, and perfectly predict Bondewald's actions. Then it was not his Dragon City who fell at this time, but Bondewald. Just at this time, after a short interval of time, Longcheng can now be opened for a while. Seeing and domineering. It must be resolved quickly. Which was a little stunned by Bondewald just now, and thought to himself in his heart. Absolute realm, open. Longcheng meditated silently in his heart, and his perception field instantly enveloped the entire island. And then stretched out for more than 10 kilometers. At the same time, Longcheng took a closer look at Bondewald, and saw the miserable appearance of Bondewald, showing a surprised look. Next second, Longcheng's face changed dramatically, and he shouted to Beasta, who had already withdrawn his sword and relaxed his vigilance. Be careful, Beasta. Bondewald, who was half kneeling on the ground and lowered his head to make it difficult to see his expression, raised the corners of his mouth slightly. Then Longcheng, who was still a little numb on the right side, disappeared instantly, shaved. Momo. Times. Go to hell. Unmoving, Bondewald, who everyone thought was out of combat power, instantly took out the pistol on his waist and pointed it at Beasta. Bang! In the flash of lightning, a bullet was ejected from Walder's pistol with a tongue of flame, and it suddenly became 100 times larger, and shot at Beasta, who was only a dozen meters away, at 100 times the rate of fire. There is no time to let Beasta reacted, and Longcheng also opened the absolute field in time to detect Bondewald's psychology, and the activity predicted the danger. With a short attack distance of tens of meters, if Beasta was shot by Bondewald 100 times, the consequences are unimaginable. I am grass. The figure of Longcheng turned his back to Beasta, and suddenly appeared between Beasta and the bullet that could be called 100 times as much as a cannonball. This is something that Longcheng knew in advance and teleported to catch up. 100,000 tile Zhengchen Black Dragon multiplied by 10. Had time to think about it, Longcheng subconsciously threw the strongest punch so far, a million tile positive punch blessed by the super hard armed color. In the next instant, the fist touched 100 times the bullet. Bang! Before everyone could see what Wald and Longcheng had done, a loud bang resounded through the sky and spread. Unprecedented shockwave, which was hundreds of times stronger than all previous fights, blasted away in a radius of 100 miles in an instant, earth-shattering. The clouds in the entire sky were washed away, leaving incomparably magnificent traces. The sea is also marked by this island. As the center, set off a huge wave, and rewind to the surrounding. 289. Victory. With the deafening crashing sound, Guangyu Longcheng's iron fist collided with 100 times bullets, creating fierce sparks. Whether it is the iron fist of Guangyu Longcheng or the 100 times bullet of Bondewald, they all contain extremely terrifying energy. It was clearly a giant bullet as hard as iron, but it was crushed by Dragon City's fist visibly to the naked eye. Bondewald, your journey is over. Accept your fate. Longcheng roared, and the iron fist pushed forward with the pistol bullet like a cannonball. The power of that bullet was no match for Longcheng's Black Dragon version of the million-tile Zhengchen. Bondewald on the ground flew back upside down, and the speed was not inferior to Bondewald's speed after using his ability to speed up 100 times. I thought that everything was under control, and Beasta would die in his own hands. I didn't expect Guangyu Longcheng to be able to block his inevitable ultimate move so incredible. No. Looking at the bullets that were constantly magnifying in front of his eyes, Bondewald roared, his eyes showing a deep unwillingness. Boom! There was another loud bang, and everyone felt the strong vibration of the entire ground. Everything happened in an instant, whether it was Bondewald's bullet or Guangyu Longcheng's counterattack, it was almost unbelievable. Except Guangyu Longcheng, Bista and Bondewald 3, no one could react to what happened. What happened? Cough, cough. My God. A burst of smoke filled the air, shrouded around the three people in Guangyu Longcheng, and no one could see the situation inside clearly. Cut. Boss Walder must have taken them all down. Sebastian swung the round hammer covered with thorns, and looked at the players of the 5th Division with a bad expression. In his opinion, Boss Walder is invincible, never need to doubt. Giggle. The old woman Nai Chin covered her mouth and giggled. Gyram, who was beside him, also looked at Bista's 5th Division, Caesar, Monet, and others with malicious intent. Captain Walder has dealt with their 2 strongest men, and the rest can be slaughtered at will. The small eyes in Gyram's spectacle frame smiled treacherously, ready to wait for Boss Walder to join hands. Only Bing Jack looked at the piece of smoke with a worried expression. Wald. The Duke of Inyulan and the shopkeeper Cat Viper barely stood up on the ground at this time. They were hit by Bondewald's fist just now. At this moment, their bodies were like a river overturned, and they almost explained their old life here. They didn't know what happened in these short seconds, but they really felt the terrifying energy hedging just now. At this moment, he stared blankly at the smoke and dust around him, the surging sea in the distance, and the sky covered with clouds, but he couldn't see the figures of His Royal Highness Dragon City, Bista, and Bondewald clearly. Your Highness. His Royal Highness Dragon City. Duke Inuarashi and the shopkeeper Cat Viper shouted anxiously. Boss of Dragon City. His Royal Highness Dragon City. Caesar and Caribou, 2 usually glib people, also shouted. One is worrying about the life factor map on Guangyu Longcheng. One is to pretend to be concerned, in case Guangyu Longcheng does not die. Monet does not pretend to shout, but just observes quietly. Captain Vista. Captain. ... The members of the 5th Division were all anxious, staring at the battlefield nervously. Stop shouting, I'm fine. A steady voice sounded from the center of the smoke, revealing the figure of Bista. Bing Jack's heart thumped. It wasn't Walder's voice. Wald. Ahem. Walder, are you all right, Walder? Bing Jack cried anxiously, grabbed the bottle, and stumbled towards it. At this time, Bing Jack couldn't care about what Guangyu Longcheng and Bista would do to him. Gyram, Sebastian and Nakan also realized the problem, and looked at the smoke and dust with shocked expressions. The 3 figures that gradually became clear in the middle did not dare to act rashly. Don't worry, he's not dead. The voice of Guangyu Longcheng sounded, and this sentence was what he said to Bing Jack. The little old man walking towards the center of the battlefield heard the sound. He was stunned, stopped and looked up at the young man who impresses many people in this world, the corners of his eyes moist. Great. Your Highness, you are fine. The Duke of Inuarashi and the shopkeeper Cat Viper saw Longcheng who appeared, and shouted in surprise. Guangyu Longcheng didn't say much, and controlled the 9 tails behind him to wave, and quickly brought up a frantic whirlwind. After a few breaths, all the large pieces of smoke and dust were blown away, revealing the scene behind Guangyu Longcheng and Bista. Behind them, there is a big pit that is more than 10 meters deep and 100 meters wide. Bondewald was hit by the 100-fold bullet in the center of the big pit. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read. 290. Bista's attitude. Thank you. With a smile on his face, Bista said to Longcheng. This is the 2nd time Bista thanked Guangyu Longcheng. It was really him just now. Careless, it was almost him who was hit by 100 times the bullet. But apart from sincere thanks, Bista was more amazed at this young man who had been on Papa's boat for a while at the time. It is possible to stop the bullet when the 100-speed bullet is only tens of meters away, and shoot the bullet back in an instant. What degree of prediction is this? The reaction speed and strength are now far away from the Light and Moon Dragon City leaving the Moby Dick. The time is not far away. Bista remembered that Guangyu Longcheng was clearly a pirate novice at that time. He practiced murloc jiu-jitsu in the sea every day. Moondragon City fished it up to prevent him from drowning in the sea. However, the current Guangyu Dragon City has grown to such a promising level after a short period of time. Not only did they save themselves time and time again, but they also defeated opponents they had never beaten before. Was a strange gleam in Bista's eyes when he looked at Longcheng. The young man that Dad used to be optimistic about will not disappoint. Longcheng nodded noncommittally, and also returned a frank smile to Bista. Them, Whitebeard's sons, Longcheng doesn't need to be so polite. Just now, it was indeed that he opened the absolute realm of arrogance, and only then could Bista be saved. On the Moby Dick, I have the kindness of you and your father. After saying goodbye, I didn't have time to have another drink with you, so Dad left. Longcheng showed a look of regret, sighed, and said. Bista's smile faded, showing a hint of loss. After a few seconds of silence, he said, looking at Dad hanging the medicine bottle every day, we sons know that such a day will come sooner or later. Even with such mental preparation, when such a day does come, things will still catch everyone off guard. Longcheng nodded and said. He also remembered that when he was sheltering from the limelight on the Moby, Bai was already hanging the medicine bottle every day. Yeah, after my father left, when I look back on the days on the boat with my father, I was really happy at that time. Bista revealed his reminiscences. Corner, unknowingly, it turned up again. Even if you hang a hanging bottle, you have to gulp down meat and drink big gulps. Must be very happy to have you sons with him during the last period of time. Each of you must be the pride of your father. Feeling Bista's loneliness, Longcheng looked at Bista and comforted. Well, we believe so too, so here we are. The quake fruit is Dad's relic, and we want it back, or, at least we can't let it fall into the wrong hands. Those of us, sons, can't in any way see the fruit of the shock that was part of Dad's life being tainted by the unrighteous. Bista's eyes were firm, and he said the reason why they came to grab the Junjun fruit. Hearing this, Longcheng was secretly relieved. Seems that the Whitebeard pirates come to compete for the Junjun fruit, and it is not necessarily the same. To get the Junjun fruit into their hands, they are just worried that this Junjun fruit will be taken away by the unrighteous, and they will act unrighteously. The incident tarnished their father's reputation. Since this is the case, Longcheng doesn't have to worry about having too much conflict of interest with Bista and the others. Longcheng has been worried before. If they get the Junjun fruit, and they must take the Junjun fruit back, will there be a conflict at that time? Now it seems that Longcheng is overthinking himself, and thinks too stingy of the white-bearded sons. Judging from Bista's attitude, if Longcheng finally got the Junjun fruit, the Whitebeard pirates would be willing to let him use it. Because Longcheng is the son of Guangyu Odin, the Whitebeard pirates know about Longcheng, and Longcheng itself is not an unrighteous person. The most important point is that Longcheng was once a member of the Moby Dick, and was recognized by Whitebeard. To a certain extent, Longcheng is also their own. However, Longcheng tried his best to save Bista many times, not to win Bista's favor, nor to talk about the shock fruit. But because Longcheng regards the people of the Whitebeard pirates as partners. It is also because when the Whitebeard pirates were escorted by Malin Fando in Longcheng, they mobilized all forces to contain the navy, so that Longcheng could have a greater chance of escaping. Such kindness, Longcheng will definitely find an opportunity to repay. Then what are you going to do with this trouble? Longcheng asked. He was referring to Bundiwald, who was knocked unconscious by him in the big pit behind him, and the crew of the ward pirates such as Gairam. 291. Pursuit, by my side. People are yours to deal with, and of course they are handed over to you to deal with. Bista looked behind him after hearing the words, and said with a smile. Longcheng looked at the deep pit. Bing Jack was tremblingly crawling down with his own hanging bottle, while Gairam and the others on the other side were too frightened to act rashly. Anuarashi, as well as Caesar, Monet, and Caribou, saw that His Royal Highness Longcheng and the squad leader of the Whitebeard seemed to be discussing something, so they consciously stared at Wardhai for Longcheng. The new and old crew of the thieves. Aren't you angry when he said dad like that just now? Longcheng let Bing Jake go down to see Walder, and turned his head to ask Bista. He could see that Bista would say so, and obviously had the idea of letting them go. Angry. Bista nodded. Then why? Dad said that hatred can blind people's eyes and make people unable to see the world. On this sea should not be bound by hatred to their freedom. Bista said with a smile. It's just that when he and Bundywald talked like this, the other party couldn't listen. Those words are of no use to those in the midst of hatred. A lot of times things are just so funny, the truth can only be told to those who know it, but the people who really need to understand these truths can't listen to it. Longcheng also smiled. Whitebeard is really a wonderful person. When he was young, Whitebeard had no interest in treasure, and the dirty money he would get. And materials. They are anonymously sent back to the island where they were born. Even though Whitebeard, an orphan since childhood, had no family or friends there, he regarded the unnamed island as his hometown throughout his life. Good friend Roger became the pirate queen and planned to tell Whitebeard, but Whitebeard was still not interested. Whitebeard is broad-minded, accepts people who are not in this society to his own ship, and regards his crew as sons, family members, and everyone is full of admiration and gratitude for Whitebeard, so he is called Dad. Throughout Whitebeard's life, he is not family. Has the most powerful force. Do the gentlest thing. Since you said so, then let them go. Bundywald's nature is not bad, it is the conspiracy of the world government, and they cannot tolerate any powerful dissidents in their eyes, which led to such a change in Wald. Longcheng looked at Walder. Bing Jack had been slowly groping to Walder's side, lying down and not knowing what was being said in Walder's ear. Maybe he just wanted to wake him up. When he punched 100 times bullets back to Bondewald and knocked him unconscious, Longcheng could take advantage of the situation to kill Bondewald directly. When Longcheng decided to do this, he hesitated for a while, and finally let him go. Sometimes what people want to get in their entire life may be always by their side. Whose body was only the size of Walder's head, and was lying beside Walder's ear, and said thoughtfully. Who said it wasn't? In this world do not realize it. Longcheng said with deep conviction, and then went straight to Duke Inuarashi and the crew of the Ward pirates, and Bista followed behind. This scene made veteran cadres such as Gyram look terrified. Longcheng and Bista fought so much that their boss is unconscious now, and walking towards them, there is a powerful aura invisibly. Let's go, they won't pose any threat to us looking for Junjun fruit for a while. Better to keep the Ward pirates, and let the Navy and the world government have a headache when the limelight of this shocking fruit passes. Longcheng turned his head and said to Bista as he walked. That can contain the Navy and the world government, why not Longcheng? Well. Bista nodded, but secretly said in his heart, good boy, so tricky. I think you can see it too. I will appear here, and I am also here to find Junjun fruit. To be honest, I also need the power of shaking the fruit very much because of some plans that are not convenient to talk about right now. As Longcheng walked, he changed his conversation and said suddenly. If you're worried that we also have an opinion on you competing for the Junjun fruit, you do'n't have to. Bista spoke slowly, then paused, and continued in a serious tone. It's all my own, why worry? Hearing Bista's words with his own ears, a stone in Longcheng's heart has truly fallen. He came here to look for the Junjun fruit, and the thing he was most worried about was not that he could not find the Junjun fruit, or that he would be snatched away after he found it. Regarding how to find the Junjun fruit, Longcheng now has the ability to see the sky, the absolute domain of domineering, and every time you go to an island to find out whether there is Junjun fruit is simply a piece of cake. What he was most worried about was that the Whitebeard pirates had a grudge against him, and that there were other lucky people who got there first and found the Junjun fruit first. Phailu reminds you, 3 things to read. 292. Meteor Fire Fist. Slow, slow. Longcheng and Bista were about to leave when the faint voice of Bondewald came from behind. Longcheng stopped and turned his head to look. I saw Bondewald woke up and was trying hard to remove 100 times the bullet that was the size of a man. Seeing Bondewald like that seems exhausting. Hit by Bista's foil sword, his whole body was stained red with blood, and then he was hit by 100 times bullet that was returned by Longcheng's strongest punch. Bondewald's ability to survive is enough to show the strength of this man's physique. Not to mention that Bondewald is now in his 70s. Wald, how are you feeling now? When Bingjak saw Walder awake, he immediately asked excitedly. He really wanted to help remove the bullet that was pressing on Wald, but his body was too weak and thin, and he couldn't even stand up, so how could he help? On the other side, Gyram and the others were also excited, but they kept looking at the faces of Longcheng and Bista and did not dare to go over. Gollum. Bondewald lay at the bottom of the pit, trying his best. The bullet that Bondewald could fly with a slap was finally picked up by him and rolled to the ground with a dull sound of cooing. Bingjak grabbed Walder's hand and tried to help him stand up, but was thrown to the ground by Walder and the bottle. Cough cough. Bingjak. A handful of old-boned Bingjak was thrown to the ground, coughing violently. Go away. I don't need help. Bondewald growled irritably. Humiliation. This is his strongest and most angry feeling right now. Why didn't you just kill me just now? Bondewald ignored Bingjak, who fell to the ground, endured the severe pain all over his body, barely sat up against the bottom of the pit, and looked at Longcheng and Bista with gloomy eyes. What can I get by killing you? I just need to make sure that you can't compete with us for the shock fruit these days. Longcheng glanced at Bingjak, frowned imperceptibly, and said. Longcheng wouldn't say that he actually felt sympathy for the two of them, to be precise, for Bingjak. Let's go. Bista said softly. Longcheng turned around, nodded, and walked straight to Duke Inulin and the others. Let's go. Longcheng instructed Duke Inuarashi and the shopkeeper of Cat Viper. Yes. Your Highness, those people. Duke Inuarashi responded, and the shopkeeper Cat Viper looked at Gyram and the others, and asked Longcheng in a questioning tone. Let them go. Longcheng glanced at the three Gyram three and said lightly. Feeling a faint chill in Longcheng's eyes, the latter shivered in unison. Good. Cat Viper shopkeeper said, there is no objection. Let's go. Duke Inuarashi also nodded and gestured to Caesar, Monet, and Caribou. There are many people in the 5th Division who don't want to leave the Ward Pirates alone. Captain Vista, do you really let them go like this? This is a good chance to kill them. Vista looked at the excited team members, and some of them were still staring at the Ward Pirates who were fighting with them just now. Guangyu Longcheng said to let them go, then let them go. Vista said with a smile. Captain, but there's nothing left to do. Hurry up and go find Daddy's Junjun fruit. Vista interrupted the team member's words and said in an unquestionable tone. By the way, Vista, is Ace here? Before leaving, Longcheng suddenly remembered that he wanted to find Ace for Luffy, remembering that Vista asked. Why are you looking for him? Quote. Vista asked suspiciously. It's nothing, but please tell Ace that his brother has also come and is looking for him now. Longcheng shrugged and said. That kid in a straw hat. Vista looked surprised. This time it was so dangerous. Listening to what Longcheng meant, Straw Hat Luffy didn't come to shake the fruit, but just to take this opportunity to meet Ace. Yes, tell me, so that the brothers don't miss it. Well, more than half of our Whitebeard pirates have come, and we've split our way to find the Junjun fruit. Ace has also come, and is searching the northern part of this sea like us. Vista nodded and agreed, I still missed it. Longcheng said helplessly. He asked the Straw Hats to set off to the south, but Ace was now in the north, and it was estimated that he might be on a nearby island. At this time, there was a change in the sky. Shoo! Exclamation mark! Shoo! His eyes were drawn to the sky. Seeing this, everyone exclaimed. This is Meteor Volcano. It's Admiral Akainu. Longcheng showed a dignified look, because in the distant sky, there are countless lava meteor fire fists falling here. 293. All staff retreat. It was discovered. Longcheng immediately focused his attention, used the absolute domain of knowledge, and found the island under his feet. A naval fleet appeared 2 miles away from the battleship. Akainu Sakazuki was standing on the large warship headed by him. Longcheng guessed that the navy was coming for Bondewald, and it was very likely to be discovered if he stayed here. I saw Akainu standing in front of the warship, still constantly blasting the lava volcanic fist into the sky. Looking at the densely packed meteor fire fist falling in a parabolic shape, Longcheng cursed in his heart. As soon as you come up, make a big move. The big move really doesn't need money. Meteor Volcano, as Admiral Akainu's strongest move so far, is to produce a large number of huge lava fists in the form of lava through double fists and launch them into the air. Then the magma fist will be like a meteor shower, constantly falling from the sky to the earth, turning the earth into a sea of lava fire. As a large-scale destructive attack, the larger the target, the stronger the killing effect of Akainu's meteor volcano. Vista also showed a solemn expression, looked at Longcheng, nodded, and then greeting the members of the 5th Division to evacuate to the outer edge of the Ward Pirates, the island-like battleship at their feet. Let's go. Our top priority is to retrieve Daddy's Junjun fruit and avoid conflict with the Navy. The situation was urgent, and Longcheng also immediately ordered to retreat. After the battle with Bondewald, both the physical and mental exhaustion were enormous, and Longcheng felt tired now. If it is changed to be the only one who is usually alone, Longcheng will definitely not be afraid to entangle with the Navy, and then pat his butt and slip away. But don't care now. Which general came, Akainu, Aokiji, Kizaru, or Garp, who has no name of general, but who is a general, Longcheng is not sure that he can save Duke Inuarashi and others in his current state. Chang never believed in such a big thing as the competition for the Junjun fruit. The Navy would only deploy one admiral in this sea area. If here, entangled with Akainu on this pirate battleship and delayed, it is very likely that other generals will be mobilized to surround them. Run! Duke Inu-lan understood that His Royal Highness needed to recover after the battle and retain his strength, so he shouted loudly and ran to the outer edge first, and the rest immediately followed. It's over, what shall we do? Captain Walder. Seeing that even Guangyu Longcheng and others were busy retreating, Garam, Shan, and Nakan ran to Bondewald in a panic. This island. Their ship, and they have nowhere else to flee. Captain was defeated, and the admiral appeared at this time. The new crew, whom Bingjak had recruited for Walder, had long been in a mess when they saw this scene. It's over, I don't want to be caught yet. It's Admiral Akainu. We will be killed directly. What to do? Guangyu Longcheng, take me in. Please. There are even people who directly plead with Guangyu Longcheng, and want to leave the Ward Pirates in a critical situation and ask for Dragon City's asylum. Yeah, I can be a cow or a horse. Let's escape with you, please. Hearing someone shouting like that, the others also shouted like they were grabbing a life-saving straw. But there were also people who saw Captain Wald and felt that their conscience was overwhelmed and hesitated. But life is gone. Seeing that, the overwhelming meteor fire fists were about to fall, the rogues of the Ward Pirates shouted in panic one by one. Longcheng didn't have time to take care of the life and death of Wald's minions. He insisted on keeping the absolute domain open, and paid close attention to the movements of the falling meteor fire fists. Roaring down. Longcheng can directly use shaving to reach the outer edge to board the ship, but it has always been behind. Duke Inuarashi and the shopkeeper Cat Viper and others followed to retreat, in order to keep an eye on them, lest they be hit by the meteor fire fist. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the lava fists roared and fell to the island, and smashed out fire pits, causing the entire battleship to vibrate. The island was full of flames, a raging fire was ignited, and it instantly turned into a sea of fire. Ah! Help! Someone couldn't escape and was hit, and was instantly drowned in the sea of lava fire. Lava fists kept falling around Longcheng and Duke Inuarashi, preventing them from retreating. Suddenly, a lava fist fell from the top of the head to Duke Inuarashi. Duke Inuarashi, pay attention to dodge! Longcheng shouted, and rushed behind Duke Inuarashi with a stride, pushing Duke Inuarashi away. 50,000 tile Zhengchen Black Dragon. Longcheng snorted softly, covered his fist with a domineering armed look to protect himself, and turned back and punched the top of his head. Bang! After punching each other, Longcheng's black fists became hot and red, and the lava fist like a meteor was broken up by Longcheng, turning into pieces of sparks and splashing around. Phailu reminds you. 3 things to read. 294. Escape. Navy bombardment. Thank you, Your Highness. Duke Inulan showed a hint of shame and thanked Longcheng Road. Keep going, don't stop, everyone pay attention to dodge. Longcheng urged, before Akainu found them, hurry to retreat now. Seeing this scene, the rest of the people were all startled, and quickened their pace and ran to the shore. Duke Inuarashi is afraid that he will be pierced directly. Fortunately, with the presence of His Royal Highness Longcheng, everyone can feel a little at ease. Turning to look, Bista's side was also full of swords, and the team members were covering each other and retreating to their ships. After a while, Longcheng and others walked out and came to the shore where the ship was parked. Longcheng boss, you are finally back, what's going on? Seeing Longcheng and others coming out, who has been there? 3 Tongues, the guard on the boat, shouted excitedly. Since Longcheng took people off the boat into the jungle, Brock has been waiting peacefully on the boat, and then he heard the sound of fighting in the depths of the jungle. I saw the cliff in the center of the island being flattened, and the roar that resounded through the sky, making the world change. Even the Brack on the boat was not peaceful, and was almost not overturned by the surging waves, and the movement became more frightening every time. Now I can see the naval fleet on the sea in the distance, and the warship that looks like an island is constantly being launched from the warship. It's Admiral Sakaski. Longcheng stepped onto the boat first, and the rest followed. Admiral. Of astonishment and a hint of fear on Blake's fat face. Caesar, right now. Sail away. Longcheng said with a serious face, no more nonsense. Now that they got to the shore and saw the Navy ship, Akainu must have seen them too. Yes. Being used by Longcheng at will, Caesar would have murmured at ordinary times, but Caesar also knew that the situation was urgent, so he slammed straight to the bridge. Report Admiral, it's the Kid Pirates ship. On the warship headed by the Navy, a member put down his binoculars, trotted to Akainu, gave a respectful salute, and reported loudly. The Kid Pirates. Akainu stopped the lava fist that kept blasting out, and turned to look at that. Look out. Yes, General. How could Bondewald, a rookie pirate with a bounty of over 100 million, have anything to do with the Kid Pirates? Akainu wondered. Because the distance is too far, the lookout can only see that the flag of the Kid Pirates is hanging on the boat of Longcheng and others, so they mistakenly think that the Kid Pirates have an intersection in Bondewald. Since they're all here, let's catch them too. Hurry up and get close. Akainu snorted coldly, obviously not planning to let go of all the pirates he saw. Yes, Admiral, wait, this is the ship of the 5th Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. Foil Bista. Because the place where Bista's ship was moored was closer to the direction of the coming of the naval warships, the lookout not only observed the flag on the ship, but also saw Bista and the members of the 5th Division on the ship. Well, the Whitebeard Pirates. What does the old party want to do? Akainu frowned. Learn about world breakers. After Bondewald escaped from the Advanced City incident, he has been a major concern for the world government and the Navy. It's just that after Bondewald was released from prison, he has been very silent and low-key, recruiting old and new crew members, so that the Navy has never collected his intelligence. Until the Navy announced the whereabouts of Junjun Fruit, the world government's intelligence agency learned through various news channels that the Ward pirates would appear in this sea area, so Bondewald immediately became the Navy's #1 target in this operation except 4 emperors. After the 3 generals of the Navy and the Black-Wrist Zephyr briefly gathered on the mysterious island where the Junjun fruit was hidden, they divided their troops into 3 ways to hunt pirates, and the Black-Wrist Zephyr squatted near the mysterious island. It happened that Akainu saw this unusual island. Afterwards, according to the intelligence provided by the world government, it was recognized that this was a new supergiant warship built by the Ward pirates, and it had a giant cannon that could instantly destroy an island, and immediately ordered to approach, and use meteor volcano to suppress it. Akainu didn't think that Vista was just mistaking this battleship for a real island, and that the old party of Whitebeard was fighting the world destroyer. Ward is plotting something against the world government. Fire. Approach quickly, and don't let anyone go. Akainu gave an order with a gloomy face and an admiral beside him. Yes. With a snap, gave a respectful salute, and immediately turned around to give orders. After a while, the guns of all the warships of the entire naval fleet turned around and pointed at the ships of the Ward pirates, Vista and Dragon City. Akainu frowned and turned his hands into lava again. Meteor volcano. 295. Akainu's devastating blow. Fire. Of the admiral on the warship, all the cannons on the fleet fired in unison. Boom, boom, boom. Akainu also blasted lava fists one after another towards the sky, blasting towards Ward's battleship. To capture this Bondewald, who had caused a bloody storm in the past, Akainu thinks it is necessary to take it directly. A devastating blow. At the same time, this time, he also paid special attention to the location of Vista's ship in Dragon City. There are also lava fists falling towards Vista and Dragon City. It's over. Longcheng frowned and snorted coldly. At this time, the boat had already started, but there were still several lava fists about to fall on his boat. Where had Blake ever seen such a scene? He was about to be smashed into slag by the meteor-like magma fist, and his face was full of horror and incoherent. 50,000 Tile Jungchen, Black Dragon and 9 Chaos. Longcheng stretched out 9 tails, covering all 9 tails with a domineering look of armament, and blasted towards the sky. Bang bang bang. For a time, sparks splattered, and a large amount of lava scattered on the sea around the ship, making a chirp sound, and a lot of white-hot air. It's Guangyu Dragon City. Akainu stared. The warship was closer to them at this time, and he recognized that it was Guangyu Longcheng on that ship. But now it's too late to capture Guangyu Longcheng, and their ship has begun to sail away slowly. If Akainu didn't capture it personally, sending other warships could only be sent to death. And Vista's ship has also left the shore and started to leave. Damn, who told me it was the kid pirates? Akainu roared angrily behind him, and everyone on the warship trembled. Bang! Seeing Longcheng slip away under his own eyes again, Akainu snorted coldly, and now he can only concentrate on capturing the Ward pirates with a larger target. Akainu beckoned in the direction of Vista, who nodded and walked away. Longcheng was relieved. Before retreating just now, Vista gave himself a phone bug, and he would contact him after encountering Ace. The ship had escaped the attack of the Navy and slowly sailed away from the Navy. As for the Ward pirates, Longcheng once again used the absolute domain on their battleship. I saw the monstrous battleship that looked like an island, and there were cannon pits and Akainu's magma everywhere. The new members of the Ward pirates were even more chaotic, and some of them were drowned in the lava fire. Some people ran to the sea and jumped into the sea to escape, but in the face of Akainu's fleet, jumping into the sea and escaping in the end could only end up being arrested, otherwise they would be stuffed between their teeth by the Sea Kings in the sea. Trash. It's all trash. Bondewald growled in humiliation. Looking at the embarrassed appearance of the crew under his command fleeing everywhere, Bondewald recalled the scene when he was surrounded by the world government and the Navy, and his crew shot him in the back, as if everything happened yesterday. What are you doing? Do you want to be bombed to death? Go and dive into the bottom of the sea. Bondewald yelled at the 3 Gyram 3 who were waiting for his decision. Yes. Gyram and Sebastian shuddered, and immediately ran to the cockpit in the hidden position of the battleship. "Boss Walder, let me treat you," said cautiously in cold sweat. "No." Bondewald snorted coldly, stood up from the bottom of the pit with difficulty, and walked out of the pit with a sullen face. "Wald, be careful." Bing Jack followed, tremblingly, but Walder ignored him and walked farther and farther over the cannon and fire, making Bing Jack unable to keep up. "Cat Viper shopkeeper, Luffy's phone bug is there." While observing, Longcheng asked the shopkeeper of Cat Viper. I'll go look for it." The shopkeeper of Cat Viper ran to the rear cab, and after a while, ran over with a phone bug. "Your Highness, the phone bug of the Straw Hat Pirates." "Call them." Longcheng ordered to continue to observe the situation on the Ward Pirates and the Navy. "Good." Shopkeeper of Cat Viper agreed and began to call the Straw Hats. "Do-Lulu, Do-Lulu, Ku-Kai." The unique voice of the phone bug rang, and then it was connected to the other side. "Hello." The voice of a royal sister rang from the phone bug. "Miss Nami, it's me, Guanyu Longcheng." Longcheng took the microphone from the shopkeeper of Cat Viper and said, "Oh, big brother Longcheng, what's the matter?" Other end of the phone was obviously stunned for a moment, and then there was a surprised voice. "Do you have any news about the fruit of the shock?" Not yet." "Is Luffy going to let him come over and answer the phone too?" "There is no big accident. Luffy's group did not find the Junjun fruit as expected by Longcheng. If the Junjun fruit can be found so easily, then the Navy planning this operation is meaningless." After a while, Luffy's voice sounded in the microphone. "Hey, big brother Longcheng. Filu reminds you, 3 things to read." 296. Life is in danger. Bing Jack was hit hard. "How are you over there? Where are you now?" Longcheng asked. We passed 2 islands, but we didn't find the fruit. We also met Admiral Aokiji." "You met Aokiji?" Longcheng said with a face full of surprise. "But since Luffy's group can still call him now, it means that there is nothing to do now. Yes, we had a fight. We couldn't fight at all. But that person finally let us go and said something. Strange things. Weird words. What kind of navy, justice, what hypocrisy, etc. I don't remember very clearly. In short, it's quite strange. On that island, we were all beaten up. When he woke up, he was gone by himself." Luffy's tone on the other end of the phone was also a little puzzled, and explained to Longcheng. "As long as it's all right now. I have good news for you, I have news from Ace." Longcheng said slowly. "What, really? He. Where is he now? You saw Ace, please help me tell Ace that I want to kill him." As soon as he heard the news about Ace from Longcheng, Luffy's voice became very excited. "Don't get excited, I didn't say he was next to me. You are in the south now, Ace is in the north now, which is where I am now. I met Ace's buddies, they told me." Hearing Luffy's excited and happy tone, Longcheng couldn't help but smile and said, "Ace is here too, that's great. I can't wait to see him." Luffy said excitedly. "But I can't tell you my exact location now, and I haven't met Ace yet. If I see him or contact him, I'll tell you." Then Nami's voice came over the phone. "The islands here are all unnamed islands, and the route map is incomplete, we can't go directly to find you." "It's okay, then we will meet on the easternmost island on the map according to the original plan. Remember to ask Ace to come over. If you can't come, I will go to him. By the way, we will continue to help find the Junjun fruit." Luffy interjected. "Okay, that's it. PFF'd." Longcheng agreed, and then hung up the phone. "Your Highness, then let's go." The shopkeeper Cat Viper looked at the distant naval fleet and the warship of the Ward Pirates, and asked with a solemn expression. "Avoid them first, then follow the original course, heading southeast." Out of the pursuit range of Akainu, Longcheng calmed down a lot. "I thought the Navy would appear last, but I didn't expect them to stay out so quickly to hunt pirates." The next step is to strengthen the alert. This time the pirates from all walks of life gather, and the Navy must ambushing a lot of firepower in this area. Longcheng finished speaking, he closed his eyes, and once again paid attention to the confrontation between the ward pirates and Akainu with a domineering look. At this time, Longcheng is already several kilometers away from there, and Longcheng can still use the domineering arrogance for a while. But after a while, Longcheng frowned. He sees. When Bing Jack was hit by Akainu's meteor volcano lava fist, he was seriously injured. At this time, he lay dying on the ground, surrounded by a flaming lava fire pit. Heading towards the island. Bundywald, who was walking in the direction of the battleship erecting the giant cannon, turned around when he heard the movement behind him, as if he realized something. Wald. Bing Jack was lying on the ground, struggling to look at Walder with his eyes open. At this moment, in Bing Jack's eyes, Walder's figure was already a little blurry. When Wald saw this scene, his eyes were split, and he shouted in extreme anger, "Bing Jack!" Afterwards, Wald, who had been beaten all over by Longcheng and Beasta, burst out with a force, rushed towards Bing Jack, and hugged Bing Jack, who was affected by the magma fist and burned all over. "Nai Chin, hurry up and treat Lao Su." Wald looked at Nakan and shouted excitedly. Nai Chin, who was not far from Bing Jake, was also affected by the magma fist, but he was not nearly hit like Bing Jake, only slightly injured. Seeing this scene, Nai Chin was also dumbfounded and rushed to Bing Jack's side. The old woman frowned only when she saw Bing Jack's condition. "Boss Walder, Bing Jack is too injured, he has." Nakan said hesitantly, and suddenly a sad emotion came to her heart. Bing Jack was almost 80 years old, already weak, and so badly wounded that there was no chance of rescue. Bing Jack took them and waited for 30 years for Walder to be resurrected and released from prison. He didn't expect that they were all old, and finally ended up like this. No. Hearing the meaning in Nakan's words, Wald roared in a heart-wrenching manner, looking at the warships in the distance, showing extreme anger and hatred. Cough cough. Wald, don't. The surrounding sky was full of fire, and artillery fire and meteor fire fists continued to fall all around. Walder bowed his head and put his ear to Bing Jack's mouth, but the last words could not be heard. 297 The Death of Bing Jack. Go, to find freedom. Ahem, don't. Revenge. Bing Jack's breath was extremely weak, and he said in a faint voice. Boom, boom, boom. The surrounding artillery fire continued, sparks splashed all around, and Akainu's frantic attacks never stopped for a moment. What? Bing Jack, what are you talking about? Bundywald lowered his head, approached Bing Jack, and listened as intently as he could, but he still couldn't hear Bing Jack's last words. Bing Jack, who has been thin since he was a child, except he was a little taller than Wald when he was a child, and until now, for decades, he has been only as big as Wald's head. Boss Walder, Bing Jack, he has. Nakan said sadly. Walder raised his head and looked at Bing Jack, who had slowly closed his eyes. His eyes were red and his body was trembling. Looking at Walder's appearance, Nakan couldn't help but feel scared. Boss Walder. Walder's face was gloomy, and he held up his hands lightly without saying a word. Bing Jack turned around, and walked towards the giant gun gate in the face of the gunfire. Ha! Boom! Another lava fist fell behind Wald like a shooting star. Wald raised his head suddenly, his face grim. I want all the navies in the world to be buried with Bing Jack. Walder raised his head to the sky with a loud roar, took Bing Jack in both hands, and stepped forward. Momo 100 times the speed. Phew! The huge Wald directly whipped up a gust of wind, and one step was a few hundred meters, and 3 or 2 came to the door of the gun. Under Wald's feet suddenly began to slowly dive. It means that Gyram and Sebastian have gone to the cockpit and started to control the battleship to escape. From a distance, it looks like an island sinking into the sea. Report. The target is sinking. The lookout trotted to Akainu again, saluted Akainu, and then said loudly. Hey, I almost forgot that the information said ward pirates' ships can dive. Sly old thing. Hearing the report, Akainu's face was very ugly. Why so slow? Are you all rubbish? Give me full speed. If they escape, you will all give me death to apologize. Akainu scolds angrily, the entire warship is shaken, and the roar of Admiral Akainu is heard. Report. Full speed ahead already. The colonel in charge of the warship reported in a loud voice. Fuck. Colonel N is here again. The officers and soldiers on the warship sighed in their hearts, and anyone with a discerning eye could see that Admiral Akainu was just venting his anger, and Colonel Penn touched the bad head of his superior. Although Colonel Penn is very concerned about these subordinates, their warships cannot withstand the wrath of the generals again and again. Trash. Akainu glanced at Peng and let out a furious cry, causing the officers and soldiers on the warship to sweat for Colonel Peng. Fortunately, the ridiculously large warship of the ward pirates is about to sink, and Admiral Akainu has no time to anger Colonel Penn for the time being. I saw Akainu jumped up from the bow deck and directly used the moon step to jump towards Wald. Looking at the Akainu coming from the sea, Walder's eyes showed endless hatred. Gently placing Bingjak on the ground, Wald said to himself, Bingjak, you are here watching me avenge you. After saying that, Walder, who was covered in blood, walked slowly to the bottom of the fort. The base of the giant turret had been hit by the Navy's shell, and the gun's bore fell to the ground. Huh. Walder bent down, leaned his back under the barrel of the cannon, shouted loudly, his veins burst, and raised the barrel of the cannon abruptly with both hands. The Navy will kill me. Bang! A cannonball was ejected from the barrel, which was already 10 times larger than the ordinary gun. Momo 100 times the cannon. Wald roared with a ferocious face, and the blood from the corners of his eyebrows dripped down his face from his eyes. At the moment when the huge cannon shot out of the chamber, a space fluctuation appeared around the cannonball, and the volume and speed of the cannonball suddenly increased by 100 times. Akainu, who stepped on the moon and stepped in the air, watched the ridiculously large cannonball sharply enlarge in front of his eyes, and his pupils could not help condensing. Of Bondewald's capabilities and the ward pirates' new giant battleship, and Akainu is well prepared for this. Big fire. Akainu, who was suspended in midair, turned his right arm into a huge lava fist, shouted loudly, simulating the impact of a volcanic eruption, and launched the huge lava fist towards the cannonball. The cannonball that increased 100 times came to the top of the naval fleet in an instant, and Akainu's giant lava fist blasted away and collided with each other. Boom! The cannonball containing terrifying energy collided with Akainu's lava fist, causing a sensational explosion. Suddenly, the whole sky radiated a dazzling white light, as if the whole world was submerged by the explosion. Philo reminds you. 3 things to read. 298. Angry 100x Cannon. Rumbling. The violent sound of the shell explosion resounded through the sky, and it was transmitted to hundreds of kilometers away. Akainu's giant lava fist turned into a large-scale meteor in a violent explosion and scattered on the sea. The violent shock wave spread to the sea in an instant, blasting a huge deep pit on the sea, smashing the fleet. Hurry up and stabilize. Don't fall off the boat. Ah. ... On the rough sea, the warship was smashed by the violent explosion of the artillery shell, and the naval officers and soldiers on the warship were swayed one by one. In addition to the terrifying shock wave, the heat wave generated by the explosion also followed, burning the air on the sea, and the officers and soldiers on the fleet seemed to be on charcoal. Ah! It's so hot. It's terrifying. ... Boo, boo, puff, puff. Giant lava fists shattered by shells fell on the sea. Bang! Suddenly there was a loud noise, and one of the warships was suddenly hit by the falling lava fragments, and it exploded suddenly, and all the officers and soldiers on the warship were blown away. Ah! Help! ... The power of this explosion was so strong that the entire sea was shaken, and even the group of Longcheng, which was more than 10 kilometers away, was affected. A shock wave came, making everyone almost unsteady. I saw a bright spot suddenly appeared in the sky, and then the whole sky was almost drowned by the dazzling white light, and the sound of the explosion that was probably enough to spread throughout the entire sea area. What happened? Is it an explosion? The power is so terrifying. The Duke of Inuarashi and the shopkeeper of Cat Viper all had expressions of horror on their faces. Boss Longcheng, fortunately I'm fast. Caribou said in shock. It's Bondewald's strongest move, 100 times the cannon that can destroy an island in an instant. Longcheng's eyes also showed amazement, and he said solemnly. Longcheng, who opened the observation of the absolute field, has the most intuitive feeling of the power of this cannon plus the Akainu's great Spitfire. Even if Longcheng knew the power of Bondewald's 100 times cannon in the original book, it was still shocking to see it with his own eyes. This shot was fired, Bondewald was finally exhausted and almost fell. At this time, Walder's battleship was slowly sinking, and the water on the sea surface had almost reached the ground under Walder's feet. Boss Walder, let's hurry back to the battleship. Seeing Bondewald's swaying body, which seemed to be about to fall, Nakan shouted anxiously. Afterwards, Nakan ran to Walder and Bingjak and picked up Bingjak's body. Bondewald put his hand on the gun mount, barely supporting himself. It didn't kill them. Bondewald clenched his fists tightly, staring at the huge cloud of smoke from the explosion on the sea, with unwillingness and hatred in his eyes. Unscathed, the power of the explosion just now was too terrifying. After Akainu launched the huge fire-breathing giant lava fist, he had no choice but to quickly perform a moon step away from the center of the explosion and return to the warship. Humph, a mortal fellow. Akainu snorted coldly, frowned tightly, and was also secretly surprised in his heart. No wonder Bondewald was dubbed a world destroyer by world governments and navies 30 years ago. The cannon just now, if it was aimed at Mary Joa, it is really possible to destroy most of Mary Joa with one cannon. Bondewald only has such power, and the world government and the navy are most afraid of Bondevil. German thought and speech. Destroy wherever he goes, and even promise to blow Mary Joa and Marin Vando away. The world government and the navy attach great importance to the movement of the ward pirates, precisely because Bondewald behaves so perversely and is free in the navy and potential threats beyond the balance of pirates. So as soon as they got the information of Bondewald, Akainu and others scattered out and led their teams to hunt pirates. As soon as they encountered the ward pirates, they immediately tried their best to destroy and arrest them. Similarly, because they were imprisoned in 30 years into advancing the city, Bondewald was not very familiar with the existing naval system. After he was released from prison, Bingjak once told Wald about the Navy's intelligence, and Walder had only heard of the 3 new generation Navy admirals Akainu, Aokiji, and Kizaru, but he had never fought. At this time, the impact of the shell explosion dissipated, and Walder and Akainu faced each other across the sea. Boss Walder, let's go. Naichin hugged Bingjak and urged. Walder took a deep look at Akainu, his eyes were full of hatred and shadow, as if he wanted to engrave Akainu's appearance in his bones. I, Bondewald, swear to crush the navy. Walder stood up straight and roared angrily to the sky regardless of his injuries. Nakan stood on the side and only felt deafening, and all the officers and soldiers of the fleet on the distant sea heard Bondewald's crazy roar. Sea had already covered Walder's feet, and it would not be long before the battleship sank completely into the sea. 299. Down. Wald bruised. Bondewald hugged Bingjak from Nakan's hand, turned and took heavy steps toward the entrance of the battleship, walking, leaving blood on the ground step by step. Seeing this, Nakan glanced at the naval fleet with a worried expression, then hurriedly followed Walder and entered the battleship together. The sea was still rough. Akainu stood on the warship, and saw Bondewald walk into the warship, but it was too late to catch up, and frowned. The cockpit of the ward pirates' warship, Gyram and Sebastian are controlling the warship that can be turned into a submarine to dive. Sebastian, hurry up, the navy is about to catch up. Gyram observed the situation of the rear fleet through the periscope, and shouted at Sebastian anxiously. At the same time, Gyram was fortunate in his heart that if Boss Walder had not fired a cannonball at the Navy just now, knocking the Navy fleet upside down, they would probably have been caught up at this time. It's fast, fast. Don't rush. It's already sinking at the fastest speed, and it's good to have a little bit more. The fish giant Sebastian stared intently at a series of instruments and said without looking back. Boss Walder, Bing Jack and Nakan are still up, why haven't they come down yet? Gyram said worriedly. Seriously injured by the damn it guy in Guangyu Longcheng. At this time, the Navy's Akainu appeared, and Captain Walder's situation was very bad. Humph. If Captain Ward hadn't been injured, the Navy would have been blown away now. Sebastian said angrily. Boom, 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 boom. At this time, a heavy footstep sounded in the corridor leading to the outside of the battleship. The sound became louder and closer. Boss Walder, you're down. What? Bing Jack. Seeing Bundywald in the cockpit, Gyram felt relieved, and then his face changed drastically. Captain Walder was covered in blood and looked like he was going to fall at any moment, with Bing Jack in his arms. But how could Bing Jack be covered in burns? Bing Jack. Boss Walder, what's wrong with Bing Jack? Gyram shouted nervously, and Sebastian also looked at Bundywald with a look of surprise. It's just that Bundywald walked around the corner step by step without saying a word, and gently put Bing Jack down. Nai Chin, Bing Jack he. Seeing the sad and angry look on Nakan's face, Elam seemed to have guessed the result and asked stubbornly. Shook his head and reached out to signal Gyram not to speak. Gyram gradually revealed an expression of disbelief, and his eyes became slightly moist. The many years that Captain Ward was away, it was Bing Jack who led them to prepare and build the warship of their Ward pirate's dream. In their minds, Bing Jack has long since become their other spiritual leader. But Bing Jack left so suddenly that Gyram couldn't accept it. Boom! With a bang, Gyram threw at the same time looking towards Bundywald. It was Bundywald's huge body that crashed to the floor. Boss Walder. Ship's doctor, hurried to Bundywald's side to check his injuries. Sebastian, don't look at it, hurry up. Gyram clenched his fists tightly, suppressing his sadness, and urged Sebastian. At this time, looking at the naval fleet behind him through the periscope, deep hatred also appeared in Gyram's eyes. Akainu saw that only a small part of the Ward pirates' giant warship was still exposed on the sea, and the important capture targets of the world government and the Navy had to escape under his own eyes, and his fists clenched tightly. Want to go? A gloomy face, Akainu repeatedly told his subordinates to watch him release the prisoner he had obtained. Where would he put his face? Big fire. Akainu turned his arm into lava again, and a giant lava fist appeared above the warship. The super high temperature almost melted the iron of the warship. Boom! The giant lava fist was launched by Akainu without hesitation. After a few seconds, with a loud noise, a small part of the volcanic bomb scattered after the lava fist burst hit the giant warship of the Ward pirates. Most of the volcanic bombs fell on the sea, instantly making the nearby waters boil. Bang! The already broken giant gun mount was hit by a volcanic bomb and shattered. Admiral Akainu. A phone call from the headquarters. Marin Fando suddenly called, and the correspondent quickly delivered the phone bug to Akainu. It's a coincidence that I'm calling at this time. Akainu snorted coldly and glanced at the giant battleship that was completely submerged in the sea. Philo reminds you. 3 things to read. 300. Caught a loneliness. Do Lulu. Pu Kai. Akainu picked up the phone with one hand and connected with Marin Fando. Hey, is Akainu here? The deep voice of the Warring States Marshal could be heard from the telephone bug's handset, and the eagerness of the Warring States Marshal could be heard from the voice. It's me, Akainu. Akainu said with an expressionless face. How's the action over the 3 of you? Are all the pirates under Whitebeard here? Warring States asked. The situation of the Whitebeard pirates is still unclear, but I just met the ship of the 5th Division of Whitebeard, and the Iron Arm pirates and Ward pirates of Guangyu Longcheng, and the 3 sides have gathered together. The 5th Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, Guangyu Longcheng and Vald appear at the same time. The voice of the warring states in the phone bug suddenly increased. Yes, when they were discovered, their ships were all leaning against Bondewald's gigantic warships at the same time. What are they going to do? When Guangyu Longcheng and Whitebeard hooked up with the Ward pirates and went to Bondewald, didn't they just get out of prison not long ago? Sengoku asked three questions in a row, his voice almost roaring. One is known as the World Breaker, the world government's #1 confidant. One is Guangyu Longcheng, which has recently made the world of pirates turbulent, and its strength and potential threat are second only to the 4 emperors. One is one of the original 4 emperors who died of Whitebeard, but the power of the more than 40 pirates under his command should not be underestimated. The fact that Guangyu Longcheng and the Whitebeard pirates are getting close is a fact that the Navy already knew during the Battle of Marinvando. But how could they get together with Bondewald, who was locked up and pushed into the city and isolated from the world for 30 years? Thinking that after the death of Whitebeard, the relationship between Guangyu Dragon City and the Whitebeard pirates may be even closer, warring states is enough of a headache. At this time, I have to add a madman Bondewald who claims to destroy Marijoa and Marin Vando. How can the warring states not be nervous? I don't know, but I have seen that Bondewald was injured just now. They don't look like they're working together. Akainu frowned. Is that so? Wait, listen to you, they ran away. Hearing Akainu say that Bondewald is like Guangyu Longcheng, and the white-bearded pirates clashed, and the stone in Sengoku's heart fell a little. Immediately, Sengoku realized what Chijong meant, and slapped the table again and roared. As soon as I came, Guangyu Longcheng and Foil Beasta had already boarded the ship and were about to escape. What about Bondewald? Sengoku said with a headache. Glanced at the sea in front of him. It turned out that the position of the battleship was empty and only the sea was left. Bondewald's ship or submarine had no idea where it had dived. Also escaped, dived into the bottom of the sea and escaped. Not only did they not capture Kazuki Ryuji and Beasta, but they also let Bondewald go, and Akainu was also unhappy. Bondewald also escaped you. It's a loneliness. Sengoku asked angrily. Do I want to let them go? The last time Garp and Kyabu joined forces to ambush without leaving Guangyu Dragon City, how could I catch up with Guangyu Dragon City while staring at Bondewald? The hot-tempered Akainu also shouted unceremoniously. Fuck. Warring states directly exploded with a rough sentence. Silence on the other end of the phone for a moment, and the voice of the warring states rang again. Let me tell you, according to reliable information, the 4 emperors have sent additional personnel to your side, and it is very likely that they will go there too. In order to prevent accidents, the Navy headquarters has also sent additional personnel to your side as appropriate. Be careful, point. Got it. Akainu snapped the receiver back onto the phone bug. His face was very ugly, and the operator next to him was frightened and uneasy. Turn the course immediately, and pursue the ship with the flag of the kid pirates that escaped just now. Akainu's face was gloomy, and he ordered loudly. So all the warships turned around one after another, and at the same time, they dispatched lifeboats one after another, and headed for the warship that was destroyed by Akainu's fire when it exploded just now. After the survivors who fell on the sea were rescued and boarded, the naval fleet moved forward at full speed and pursued Guangyu Longcheng. Guangyu Longcheng, the Navy will not let you get the shock fruit. Clenched his fists tightly and stared straight ahead, as if he could see Longcheng's ship. No, we're in trouble. Standing on the bow, Longcheng opened his eyes and said with a frown. Your Highness, what's wrong? Duke Inuarashi asked hurriedly. Akainu is chasing after the naval fleet just now. Longcheng said.